Welcome back to Bad Take Philly, and we're starting up our fantasy football content. We're in full fantasy mode. We just did our dynasty draft, so we'll be talking about that in the next podcast. Today we're doing a top 24 wide receiver ranking tier list for fantasy. It's going to be PPR, and it's going to be who we think you should target in your league, and top 24.
Use these for your drafts. And so me and Brendan are going to have our rankings, and we're going to come up with a consensus list, which you will see on your screen. So, Brendan, who do you have as your number one overall wide receiver this year?
Cooper Kupp.
So, I have Justin Jefferson,
Okay.
number one.
So Justin Jefferson.
I
Okay.
think both are fair. I think both are the top tier.
I have Jefferson as 2, so they're both in the top tier.
Yeah. So I think Jefferson and I have Kupp as 2. I think it's pretty simple. So Jefferson and Kupp can both definitely go up there.
But then I have Chase as 3.
I have Chase as 3 as well.
So
And I have
yes.
them all in the S tier, the top tier, and then I have my tier break. I think all three of them are very safe picks. I think they should both all be top. I think Jefferson and Kupp should be top 4 picks in your draft, and I think Chase should be at least top 7 picks in your draft, especially in a PPR format where wide receivers are more valuable.
Yeah.
The reason why I have Jefferson over Chase is because of the new head coach who was previously the Rams offensive coordinator. Already said he's going to give Jefferson just more targets, and they're going to be targets which are shorter, so they're more high percentage targets, and he's going to be able to take those and get more gap. And it's just he's going to be the Cooper Kupp of this year.
Yeah.
And not going to be able to give him the 4th round of Cooper Kupp last year, but he's going to just be an absolute stud as long as he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with these 3. That's why they're in the S tier. Kupp and Jefferson are going to get a shit ton of targets.
They're more safe.
Yeah, they're more safe. Chase obviously is one of those guys who's like he's already the best in the league. Very young, but it is a very crowded roster. They got Higgins. They have a good backfield. But obviously he's the number 1 option, so you got to put him in that. That's
Yeah, he just has all 3 of these guys, but Chase especially has the upside to just win you any week. You saw in the fantasy championship last year, he went for like 50-some points
55
against you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and he just won leagues last year.
Mhm.
So I'll have a tier break here,
Okay.
which I think is pretty fair.
Mhm.
And then the next year I have Davante Adams as my wide receiver 4.
Okay, so I have Diggs and then Adams.
I have Diggs
Yeah.
after Adams.
So the only reason I put Adams below Diggs, which I kind of felt really like not good doing this, just because it's Davante Adams, but the fact that Davante is going from one of the best arm talents of all time to Derek Carr, which is not Derek Carr is a pretty good quarterback, and he's
It's
going to
just
be
going from Rodgers to anybody.
Yeah.
Downgrade.
when it's Carr throwing you the ball versus Josh Allen throwing you the ball and Stephon Diggs, like Allen has the potential to be the best quarterback in the league. He played like it in the playoffs last year. So I just think it's a safer option to get Diggs. It's not unsafe to get Davante Adams at all. But again, that is a very crowded receiving core. They have Waller and they don't have the greatest O-line, so Carr might not be able to throw the ball as well as he wants to, but
I absolutely agree. And that's why we have tiers here, because they're on the same tier.
yeah.
I have no problem with you going Diggs over Adams. I think Adams just has a little more upside just because of who he is.
I agree.
I think the Raiders could be more shootouts than the Bills just because the Bills might shut out more teams, and the Raiders are in obviously the hardest division of football. They're going to play the Chiefs twice, Broncos twice, Chargers twice. Those games are all going to be high scoring affairs where Davante Adams is going to get double-digit targets in a lot of those games, and he could just feast with Carr going at the ball. But I have no problem selling Diggs there, who has keeping the same quarterback, and we have seen him produce with Allen before.
The only thing that I have against Diggs, it could be because I watch more Bills than anything, but I feel like he can get shut out of games a lot easily, like a lot more easier than Davante Adams would. But now it's a new quarterback and stuff. But like there was just some games where Diggs just was a non-factor last year, and like Adams was a factor every game.
I mean, listen, Davante Adams is I think he's still the best receiver talent in the league.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for fantasy, you got to look at it at a different perspective. And when he's got a downgrade, when he's got a crowded receiving core,
and he's still up there.
still up there.
He's still top
But
5.
it's still if we were doing this 2 years ago, it'd be unheard of for him not to be in that S tier, not to be the 1 or 2.
And it would it surprise you this year if Adams has a couple games where he has 3 catches for 40 yards because Waller went off for 120 and a touchdown, Renfro had 80 and a touchdown? That's probably going to happen. There's going to be games where Adams doesn't get the crazy amount of targets because he's doubled and Waller's not and Renfro's not. But he's going to have big blowout games as well.
Yeah.
So I also had 2 right here.
Okay.
And then I start off next tier with CD Lamb
Okay, I have CD after Debo.
after Debo.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
Debo next.
I have Debo at 9.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I would say my next tier. My next tier is CD, Hill, Higgins, Debo, Evans. That's my B tier.
Okay. So I have. Okay. I have CD Hill Higgins after that. But like Debo's not gonna have the production he did last year because
That was a crazy year though. So
That was-
yeah, and like his rushing upside was just unheard of last year, which he still has
Mhm.
that, but
I think he gets. I think he's a little less efficient in the rushes. I think he still might have relatively the same amount, maybe a couple less, but he scored like an insane amount of touchdowns. He had games last year because I had him 8 games last year with 1 reception and like 18 fantasy points because he ran into 2 touchdowns. Like that could have very easily been like a 6-point game if he didn't score those touchdowns. So I think I like Debo. I do. I just think Ayuk takes a bigger step up this year. Kittle might be a little more involved this year, and they're going to rush the ball a lot. So I think Debo's going to be very reliant on his efficiency. I still have him in this tier. Obviously, I still have him as a wide receiver 1, just not as wide receiver 6.
so in the B tier we got Debo, CD, Hill, Higgins, Evans.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I like Hill. Another player who's changing teams, but I like him a lot this year just because of he's going to have some shorter targets, which he's going to be able to take to the house. You know, he's going to have a lot of targets around the 1 yard line, and he's going to be able to take those for 15-yard gains consistently, just because of how good of a talent he is after the catch.
Be looking for.
CD.
I just saw him right there.
Oh, I'm fucking forgetting this touchscreen.
CD
Right there.
CD has more targets showed up in his
Well,
CD Hill.
CD's going to have more targets available with Mark Cooper leaving, obviously. He already showed last year that he is a very good talent. He just needs to put it together a little more consistently. He hasn't been insane his first 2 years. He's been a little bit of a letdown in that fantasy perspective because he's only been like a back end wide receiver 2 both years, I believe. But last year definitely showed promise. His first game of the year last year, I think he got 35 fantasy points with a bunch of targets. He just needs to show that he can do it by himself because he's really the lone weapon on this offense going into the season with Michael Gallup being out. And like Dalton Schultz is like an okay option, good name though. And Tolbert is like an okay rookie. But yes, I think CD can take a big step up this year. He's got the upside to be the wide receiver 1 this year. He does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His splits with Amari off the field, when Cooper was still there, was very, very good. So I don't think you have to worry about him being productive. I mean, they had the best offense in the league, like stats wise last year. So whenever you get a Cowboys receiver, as much as I hate to say it,
Dogs.
they're gonna produce with Dak throwing them the
He
ball.
has so much fucking garbage time.
Yeah, and plus like Zeke is not gonna produce like he did in the past, and Pollard's gonna be more involved in the
Receiving game?
Yeah, receiving game.
He might be a little more involved. I don't really buy into that, but that's fine. Like CD's he's gonna get his, and he's on the upside of being on that elite Cowboys offense
Mhm.
with Dak throwing in the ball. They're gonna be behind some games because if the Cowboys, that's what they do, and they're gonna have those garbage time points.
Yeah.
So we have Higgins and Evans still talking. What's about Higgins?
Yeah. So with Higgins, I mean, you don't hear about Like-
Higgins.
you don't hear about wide receiver 2s on offenses like being this high, fantasy wise very often. But Higgins is a great receiver, and again with Chase probably getting most of the attention from corners and secondaries and opponents. Higgins is gonna have a good season. He had a 1,000-yard receiving season last year. And I
Only
think
like
he had-
13, 14 games still.
Yeah, and I think he had 900 the season before, or almost 900.
He relies rookie year. Yeah.
And so he's shown the production as not the wide receiver 1, and the fact that he's gonna get
And the wide receiver 1. He wide receiver 1 is rookie year.
yeah, but he wasn't as good as he was last year.
Yeah, no, he took a big step.
Yeah,
For sure.
and with Burrow throwing the ball with a new offensive line, I don't think you can go wrong here.
So I have Higgins. Personally, I had Higgins at 8 on this list. I think he's 9. I have such a deep faith in Higgins. He is a still very young wide receiver. He's 23 years old. he's on this offense that last year, if you look at the Bengals offense, they started off the year in a very run heavy neutral game script. Whenever they were in a neutral game script, they ran the ball like, in a very high
Burrow
rate.
was also coming off the injury.
Yeah, so now Burrow's not coming off injury. If you look at the end of the year into the playoffs where they had the most success, they were throwing the ball at a super fast rate, and they were their pace of play increased significantly. And during the regular season, the Bengals' pace of play was very slow. I think it was bottom 10 in the league. Now they have the upside to be a top 10 pace of play team, which is going to give more plays, which is more targets. And they're also very the target share in the Bengals is very concentrated. It's going to go Manning to Chase and Manning to Higgins, and not much for anybody else. Boyd's going to get some of his. I'm not sure who their tight end even is right now. It's like Heath Hurst or something. Like their tight end is not going to get a lot. It's just you could see Chase and Higgins combining for over 50% of targets total from Burrow, and he's going to throw the ball a ton. So I could genuinely see both of them finishing in the top 5 receivers. I think it's in the range of outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's hard for like they'll finish top 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't talk about Hill. It's Tyreek Hill. Did we?
Yeah, I did.
It's Tua throwing the ball, but it's Tyreek Hill, so it doesn't matter.
He's going to get a lot of yak.
Yeah.
And Mike Evans is Mr. Consistent, so there's not much else you can say about that. He's going to be a low-end wide receiver 1 with good touchdown upside. He's going to put up good yards. You're going to have good games. Going to have some bad games. But you can't really go wrong with him. I think he's being undervalued in drafts right now. I think he's going a little bit later than the wide receiver 10. So I definitely recommend scooping him up.
Yeah, Godwin is coming off the injury, but he should start. I think he's starting week 1.
He's like, yeah, maybe week 1, but he's also going to start a little slower, maybe.
Yeah.
And wide receivers that have torn ACLs, actually just players that have torn ACLs tend to be a little slower the next year and also tend to have recurring injuries. So not saying that Godwin's going to get injured, but if I had to pick some players in the NFL to have a high chance of getting injured this year, I would pick Chris Godwin just because he's coming off the ACL. And if Godwin goes down, Evans goes from the wide receiver 10, probably closer to the wide receiver 6. So
Could we
just a
also
big target.
put Keenan Allen in the B?
I was just gonna say that actually.
You think so?
Because
Yeah.
I feel like he can, like, he's similar to a Mike Evans type numbers and stuff. And
I am a little nervous of Keenan Allen having a little bit of a slowdown this year, but I can see it. I have him as my wide receiver 12. So
I think
if you
that
want to, that's okay with me.
I think that like him and DJ Moore, I have close to each other just because
Mhm.
DJ Moore is a very good receiver, but with Keenan Allen, like Keenan Allen's getting older and he could have that year where he's slowing down. But with Herbert throwing on the ball, and I think Herbert, he showed a lot of promise last year. He was very good last year.
He was no promise. He was just a fucking animal.
yeah,
He was just good.
And I think it's only up. Like not
yeah,
only up, but like he's gonna take even more of a leap. And I think Mike Williams was kind of a fraud in what he put up last year.
He got paid. I think he's gonna have a big year.
I don't like I love Mike Williams, but I don't know if he can put up the numbers he did last year. At least the
first half.
first half of the year.
Well, no, that's ridiculous. But
But I think Keenan Allen's the one in that offense, and he's gonna get the ball a lot, and he's a big target.
And even if like he goes down a bit, like Herbert's just going up. So
Yeah.
it'll counteract at least for this year.
I was looking at I was listening to some stats on his like the percentage of routes that he gets open on. It's been going down every year. So this year he's getting older. I think he's like 30.
Yeah.
But he's on the high powered offense, so I can definitely see him being.
And-
I just don't think he's in that. I don't think he's in that tier because I think like I'd rather have all those guys significantly more than him. But if you want to put him there, it's fine.
At the end of that tier, I think it's fair.
The next tier I have AJ Brown, I have Keenan Allen next year, but that's fine. I have Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Waddle, Sutton, Allen Robinson, and Mike Williams.
Wait, sorry, it's AJ Brown, Pittman.
We'll go slowly. I have AJ Brown, Pittman, and Moore to start off.
Okay, I have AJ Brown and Moore. I don't have Pittman.
So, I mean, AJ Brown, new offense, obviously. I think the Eagles are going to be a relatively neutral in terms of how often he pass the ball, but he's shown he does not need a ton of targets to be an elite fantasy option. He can do it on 8 or 9 targets a game. He doesn't need that like 12, 13 targets a game to be a good option. He's going to score touchdowns. He's going to get tons of yak. And as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a great fantasy option.
Yeah, if Hurts stays or if Hurts takes that leap next year this time, we might be talking about him in like higher B tier towards A tier. Yeah, I could see.
He's upside this year. He's one of those players, one of these players that I could see finishing top 5 if everything falls right.
Yeah, he's been one of the best receivers in the league since he's came in the league. But with Hurts and the kind of question mark at quarterback, you got to put him towards down here. But he's got so much upside, and DJ Moore kind of the same thing.
I think DJ Moore's a lot more safe than AJ Brown. AJ Brown's a risky pick with high upside. I think DJ Moore has upside to be like a low end wide receiver one.
Yeah, it's just,
he's not a big touchdown guy. It's his problem.
It's just tough with who's throwing the ball. Like Baker's gonna be better than people think.
No, Baker's an upgrade of all the players he's ever
Yeah,
had.
he is.
Yeah.
So like it's still
So I like
it's still Baker Darnold, and it's just it feels so bad to say that for him because he's a great receiver. But it's DJ Moore.
yeah, DJ Moore is a great option.
He puts up 1,000-yard.
Yeah, every year.
Seasons.
I think this year, I think he does take a little bit of a step forward. I'm thinking more towards like the 1,200-yard range, and maybe a couple touchdowns too. To catch some touchdowns in camp from Baker, which is nice to see. He has been very, very bad scoring touchdowns in recent years, so hopefully he can step those numbers up and get a little lucky in the second department, and then he could be a wide receiver one.
Yeah.
So Pittman, I think, deserves to be in this tier.
Yeah,
Last year, he had stretches where he was a wide receiver one, and he had Carson Wentz throwing him the ball. Frank Reich also came out and said that they want to limit Taylor's touches this year. Not limit them, but they want them to conserve Taylor. He wants Taylor to be a lasting product for the Colts. And so that's going to be a little more passes. And they don't really have any other options besides him. They have like Paris Campbell, who's probably going to get hurt by week 2, and Mo Alley Cox at tight end. Like those are just not good options. Pittman's going to get a large target share in this offense, and he's going to put up touchdowns because he's big. He's going to have big plays. I think he's a very good route runner. He's just a good player in general. And I think Matt Ryan's an upgrade from all the quarterbacks he's ever had. I think he's going to finish as a high-end wide receiver too.
yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of Pittman. Like for him, I'm not the hugest fan of Pittman in fantasy, but he's gonna get a lot of targets, and like Dalton said, Taylor is gonna he's not gonna take a step back, but
He's going to have less
he's
carries.
gonna have less carries. So, I have Terry McLaurin.
I do not.
Okay.
I
have-
also would not for fantasy.
I have Waddle, Sutton, Allen Robinson on my plans. Any of those?
I have Mike Williams. I don't have Sutton. I have Waddle coming up, but I have Deontay Johnson over Waddle.
I have Deontay Johnson way low.
Really?
Yeah. We can get to that.
Okay.
I think we talk about Mike Williams and Waddle.
Yeah.
Is that fair? So Mike Williams just got a huge payday. Relatively deserved, I say. He's been inconsistent. He's been injury prone his whole career, but he's on this high flying offense, as we talked about Keenan Allen already. He's got massive touchdown upside, and he has the upside to win you weeks, and he has the upside to win you championships. As we saw last year, the first 4 or 5 weeks, he was the wide receiver 1, I think, or wide receiver 2 behind like Cooper Kupp. He was an absolute stud in fantasy for those weeks. So he's shown that he can be that elite option. He took a big step down after that, which is unfortunate for him. But I think this year there's a little more consistency with him, and he does have the upside to just win you weeks.
Yeah.
And so I think a mid wide receiver 2 is a pretty fair grade for him.
Yeah, and with Waddle, I honestly he's a risky player just because he had an insane amount of targets last year, especially for a rookie. And the quarterback play wasn't that good last year, and he still produced. He had 1,000-yard receiving season. But the fact that Hill comes into this offense is one of the best in the league. Again, Tua, he's not a solid answer for that offense right now. So he could take a huge step back. He could stay around the same. He's not going to get nearly as many targets, but he's still productive last year enough to be a good wide receiver too. And so hopefully he doesn't take too much of a step back, but
I don't think he takes a huge step back. I think the targets definitely go down. However, I think the quality of his targets goes up, and I think the attention he's going to get is going to be way less, obviously, because the number 1 cornerbacks are going to be on Tyreek Hill, and so Waddle is going to be able to get open more often. I think he could be one of those players where the wide receiver 2 is actually better than the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. We've seen it before with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Juju and Antonio Brown, where the wide receiver 2 in the offense is actually better for fantasy. He's going to have lots of yak, just like Tyreek Hill. He's going to get lots of targets, just like Tyreek Hill. and it's gonna be fun to watch.
If Tua's good, that's going to be a crazy offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And he gets lucky with touchdowns, he could be up there. So another good option, definitely a target for me in drafts. So now I have Sutton and Allen Robinson also in this tier. I'll make my case for both of them because you do not have either one of them in this tier
I don't have Allen Robinson on this.
on your list.
I'm
That's a terrible take.
I
So Allen Robinson has been so many reports from the Rams camp that he has just been balling out of practice. They're super hyped about him. He's part of the reason why I have Cooper Kupp at 2, just because I think there's a chance that Allen Robinson gets a little more of a target share than we think he might get. Matthew Stafford's always loved throwing balls to big wide receivers on the outside. This is exactly what Allen Robinson is, a big wide receiver on the outside. As some of you might know, last year, Allen Robinson obviously didn't have a good year, but his percentage of getting open only went down a slight bit, which tells us that he's not falling off. It was just really bad schemes and it was bad quarterback play. He's getting a huge upgrade in scheme, probably to the best scheme for wide receivers to be in the entire league. And he has a huge upgrade in quarterback. Like, he's going to have a great season, in my opinion. I have him as a mid wide receiver too. I'm targeting him in every single draft that I'm in.
Yeah, I think you can, like, I don't disagree that he's gonna be a good part of that offense and he's gonna get targets and he's gonna be a good target for Matthew Stafford. I just think that it's a similar like feel. It's not the same situation, obviously, because Michael Thomas is coming off an injury. With all these reports saying Michael Thomas is gonna like go back to a good wide receiver 1 for the Saints, and it's all these just reports out of camp, and I just don't love taking. Like, I don't love having him. What are we at? Like top 20 right now?
This is rounding about like my 18-ish.
Yeah, I just think that's a little too high for Allen Robinson, just because it's been a couple years since he's been that guy. And again, he had field throwing the ball, so I don't like it wasn't him, it was the offense he was in. And he's a very good underrated receiver. I just don't think you can take him quite this high, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is not a player that he's going to go pretty high in drafts. I think on certain sites, he's like the wide receiver 16, 17, which is where we're putting him. Or where I have
this year too.
Yeah, I think he's a good fantasy option. A little risky, obviously, one of the more risky picks. I wouldn't quite compare him to Michael Thomas because Michael Thomas we have not seen play football in 2 years, whereas Allen Robinson 2 years ago was a good fantasy option, and last year he was still a good receiver, just on a bad, very, very, very bad offense. I think he's end of C. I guess you can put him top of D, but he's been on the list.
And you said Sutton?
I've Sutton too, yeah.
So
I like to see.
I've Sutton at C as well.
I agree with that. Because Sutton's gonna get the target shares because I listen, I'm a huge Judy fan, and I think Judy's going to end up better than Sutton this year, fantasy wise, because I just think he's got the explosive like upside, and with Russ throwing the ball, I think he's going to show who he really is. If he doesn't have a good year this year, then he's not going to have a good year any year because it's Russell Wilson. But Courtland Sutton is that bigger target, and he's going to get a lot of targets. So I agree with C tier for Sutton.
Yeah, I have them very closely ranked. I think they're 2 or 3 apart in my rankings, which is pretty close. But I have Judy in the next tier. I think Sutton has more touchdown upside. He's got more big play upside. And Russell Wilson throws a beautiful, beautiful deep ball. And I think Sutton's going to be able to feast on those balls. So
Judy after Robinson in D tier.
Yes, that's exactly
Perfect.
what I would have. Actually, I'd have Brandon Cooks in front of Judy.
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
He's definitely not in front of Judy.
Well, I have my last year. I have Cooks, Judy, McLaurin, Bateman, Michael Thomas, Deontay Johnson.
Okay, I have Marquise Brown instead of Michael Thomas.
You have all those guys though?
I have all around.
Okay, that's good.
I have Bateman a little lower, but I like putting him in this list just because
upside's
upside's
so
crazy.
nice.
Yeah.
So I say we go McLaurin. You have McLaurin high, right?
I do have McLaurin.
Okay, so we go McLaurin.
Which is a lot of personal like. Listen,
He's a good wide receiver.
I know they're gonna I know they're gonna like. I know they're in our division, and I shouldn't be rooting for them, but I'm rooting for McLaurin because he's just so good, and he's never gotten the quarterbacks to throw him the ball, and he's put up numbers like he's like a Brandon Cooks, where no matter who's throwing him the ball, he puts up those numbers, and I think he's a good like if you can get him for good value, I think it's a great receiver to have. Well, obviously that's any receiver, but I just think he has the upside, and it sucks that Wentz is throwing the ball, but. He's the only like target in that all that. Like Jahan Dotson's there, but
I think he's missing a little bit of upside. I will say. I think like Carson Wentz is not a good quarterback
No.
anymore. As much as I still want him to succeed in NFL, but he's just not a good quarterback anymore.
I don't really care if he's.
Yeah, sure. I don't want to see it. But as much as I used to like it, is what I'm trying to say.
I agree.
He throws an inaccurate ball. That the offense itself is pretty lackluster. Like their running game is mid at best. Their wide receiver too, Jahan Dotson, I think
Probably worse than mid.
yeah, it's pretty bad. Antonio Gibson's like on the fucking punt squad or something. McKissick's like whatever. Brian Robinson's a rookie. McLaurin's a good wide receiver. I think Jahan Dotson also is a big factor this year, which might take away some targets from McLaurin.
We'll see.
And I know he was very inconsistent last year. I know you were very frustrated with him last year on your team.
Yeah.
But I think he does deserve to be on the list as a back end wide receiver too, which is
Yeah.
where we have him. So that's perfectly fine with me.
If they just give him the ball, he will be good.
Yes, but I think last year I saw some crazy stat. It was something like 20% of his deep targets were catchable, which is just
Yeah.
obviously abysmal for someone who has the speed that he has and the catching ability he has. I think Brandon Cooks should be the next player on this list. And that's just because of his consistency that he's been having over the last however many years it's been. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, that's true.
5-6 years. Last year he was a wide receiver too, I believe. And Davis Mills was better than everyone thinks he was. I think the Texans offense has the upside to not be a bottom 5 offense like most people project them to be.
Their upside is to not be bottom.
Yeah, but I think they might be like a closer to like average offense, which if they're
no,
average
no.
offense, I think Brandon Cooks can actually be
No. Not,
player.
they're gonna be like in the 20 to 30 range.
Yeah, like 20's relatively average.
Yeah, but they gotta climb their way out of bottom 5.
I think they're closer to 20 than they are to 30. That's what I'm trying to say. I think Brandon
Okay.
Cooks gets his 1,200 yards. I think he gets a bunch of touchdowns. And I think he's the focal point of the offense that's going to be behind. He's going to be throwing the ball a lot. And he's been a consistent wide receiver too. So I think it'd be mean to not have him here.
Yep. Who do we have next?
Next, personally, I have Bateman.
Okay. I'm okay with it. Like I think Bateman and
Yeah.
did you have Michael Thomas?
Bateman, Thomas, Deontay.
All right. I also have Marquise Brown.
I want Marcus
But
Brown to be
Marquise
at least
has
on
to
this
be,
list.
yeah.
You can take out Deontay Johnson or Michael Thomas. I'm scared of
Take top 25.
Thomas. Yes.
He's not and Deontay Johnson. So Bateman is an exciting player this year. I just took him in a dynasty league, as you will see hopefully pretty soon if you watch the next podcast. He hopefully takes over the Marquise Brown role from last year. If you look at the target share from the Ravens last year, Mark Andrews had like 160 targets, and then the next player was Marquise Brown with like 135-ish, and the next player had like 40.
Yeah.
So this is a offense that is going to be run first, obviously, but then they're going to throw the ball sometimes. When they throw the ball, it's going to either Mark Andrews or Rashad Bateman and nobody else. So he's going to he's upside for 140 targets this year, and he's a good wide receiver. He's an ex wide receiver. And he could just have a really good year. I'm very excited to have him in Dynasty. I know I'm excited to have him in Fantasy if I get any of my drafts.
Yeah. I mean, it's his opportunity to lose. He is the one in that offense right now.
And there's not really a bunch of competition either.
Yeah, Mark Andrews is going to get the majority of targets, but when you're talking about receivers, like Duvernay is not going to take the job. And Rashad Bateman, like again, Marquise Brown got upwards of 125, 130 targets.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so the upside is just there, and that's why he has to be on this list. But with Marquise Brown, last year again in a run heavy offense, he got those targets with Lamar. He had a 1,000-yard receiving year. He had some costly drops, which was
yeah,
very not fun.
Lost a week last year because of one of his drops. I was so mad.
But I just think people are passing over him when you look at a Kyler-led offense and
Yeah.
like Hopkins is not going to be there for 6 games, so that's almost half the season, or it's a third of the season when he's going to be the one in that offense. You got Rondale Moore as the 2 when Hopkins is gone, and he's a very solid 2, but he's not going to take that many targets away from him. And Kyler's shown that he is like he's a solid arm talent, and he's a better arm talent than Lamar. And Marquise Brown has that deep threat. He has speed. He has everything that he needs to be the one in that offense, and he can even keep his job as the X receiver when Hopkins is back. I think it'll be more target shares, like around 50-50. But Hopkins is on. I would say he's on the decline of his career.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think he has to be on this list.
Yeah, I mean, Murray throws one of the best deep balls in the league. If you
Yeah.
look at his stats, he's very good at it. Marquise Brown's a deep ball specialist. I think he's a little bit inconsistent this year because the Cardinals usually are pretty inconsistent as a team. Therefore, he'd be pretty inconsistent as an already inconsistent player on an inconsistent team is not a very good combination. However, I do think his upside every week to be he can be a wide receiver 1 any given week.
Yeah.
Um,
But like again, Kyler really hasn't had a Hollywood type receiver yet.
Christian Kirk's relatively close, I'd say.
I would not say he's close to.
Marquise Brown's good,
I don't know. Like
but Christian Kirk, I think Christian Kirk's better than people give him credit for.
he is better than. Okay, yeah, you're right. But
Still not
they went out and got Marquise Brown, so like I wouldn't be surprised if Kyler was in the ear of the front office saying, "Listen, I want a guy like this, or I want this guy."
And they traded a first round pick for him too, so he's gonna get. He's got to get.
So he's gonna get the targets. He's a solid option.
Yeah, and to round off the list, I have Deontay Johnson. You had him way higher than I did, I think. But
Yeah, I did.
it's
Quarterback plays.
it's quarterback play, which isn't really a huge downgrade from last year per se, because Big Ben was atrocious.
Yeah.
But Deontay Johnson got tons of targets from Big Ben. So it's a new quarterback. It's either going to be some combination of Trubisky, Pickett, and Rudolph. Like
I don't know if it's
I
gonna.
don't think Rudolph plays. I don't think he plays, but
Yeah.
they have named him as like the number 2 or something like that. I think Trubisky plays, and I think Pickett plays. And I'm just huge on Pickens. And I think that he, along with Claypool, just take away targets from Deontay Johnson. And Deontay Johnson is going to need a ton of targets to be where he was last year or anywhere close to that.
I just think Pickens is taking anything from him the first half of the season.
I think Pickens is just such a good wide receiver. I think he's going to go in there. I think he's going to command not like tons of targets, but enough where Deontay Johnson. I had him in fantasy last year, and he was getting like teens in terms of targets, like 13 targets. I think it's closer to like 9 targets.
But
It's just still good, but it's just not the elite option that he was last year. And the offense it's just a lot of question marks too.
yeah, the quarterback play is gonna definitely like it's not good. But when you look at rookie receivers like Pickens who aren't like a top 10, top 20, like they're not one of those guys where they're gonna be a X receiver right away as a rookie. They normally don't like show that production until the second half of the season. It takes them a little bit, and it takes them time to get ground in their offense. It takes some time to build chemistry, and
I would agree. However, the reason why I do not agree is because usually that is the case if there is a quarterback that is remaining. However, Big Ben is no longer there, and so the chemistry that he had with Deontay Johnson is no longer there. And now these rookie quarterback came in, Pickett and Trubisky came in, and they have a whole new training camp to find out who their favorite target is. And Big Ben's favorite target was without a doubt Deontay Johnson.
I know, but when you're talking about a rookie who's never played an NFL snap yet, it takes a little bit to get used to that. Like it's so much faster. It's
Yeah, but
different from.
I'm just saying like the chemistry argument isn't there because it's a new quarterback.
I know, but when you look at Pickens type receivers, it takes them a little bit to get ground.
And so
and so I think Deontay Johnson, like the production he has the first half of the season is still going to be very good. And if it drops off a little bit because Pickens does end up like gaining a little, like getting more targets. I don't think it's going to hurt that much. Obviously, it hurts for fantasy playoffs, but
yeah, which is what you really care about here.
I know.
So that's our top 24. Want to do a couple honorable mentions, maybe?
Sure.
So I definitely had Michael Thomas in this list. 2 years removed from, or 2 years without playing football, really, but he was such a good player when he was.
Chris Godwin.
Chris Godwin is just risky for me, in my opinion. I had him right there.
He deserves to be on this list, but
It's hard. There's a lot of good wide receivers.
Yeah,
I'm Mooney's close. Gabriel Davis is up there.
Amon-Ra.
Amon-Ra's up there, yeah. And they're all good options, but there's a lot of good fantasy options this year. And this shows you that, like, with all these names that we're naming here, be careful with your drafts. And you don't want to, like, what's the difference between a Terry McLaurin and like an Amon-Ra? Realistically, like in fantasy production, it's pretty close. So
Mhm.
maybe that tells you to not target wide receivers in that round and wait another round to get Amon-Ra in the next.
yeah, I mean, receiver depth is
It's crazy.
insane.
It's crazy.
You can, like, there's so many receivers and there's not that many running backs. So
Yeah.
So, I mean, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give us a like, give us a subscription. We're gonna try to do more fantasy football content if this video does anywhere near well.
or not, we're having fun.
We're just
with
gonna
it.
keep
Some-
going.
Yeah. We're gonna do top 24 running backs coming up. We'll probably do top 12 quarterbacks along with a top 12 tight end in the same video, probably. We might do tips and tricks, how to do a draft, whatever you guys.
We're possibly gonna do content during the season
During the season,
for
yeah.
like, I don't know what, like,
Starts and sets this week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
starts
it's
and-
just normal stuff, trade targets.
And we will be talking about Dynasty on the next podcast. So if you've made it
If
this
you
far,
care, yeah, we had our startup dynasty draft.
Yep.
Some crazy picks happened.
yeah.
Very entertaining,
Right.
and we're gonna go over our 4 teams.
Yeah.
Dakota will be here. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks.
See you next time.